Բարի երեկո։ Տարածաշրջանային ռազմաքաղաքական վերջին զարգացումների վերաբերյալ
Good evening. My guest today is Michael Rubin. Mr. Rubin is a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute.
Պաշտոնյա վերլուծաբան Michael Rubin-ի հետ։ Mr. Rubin, I thank you very much for accepting our invitation and joining us on Artsakh Public Television from Washington.
Thank you for having me.
Mr. Rubin, EU has been planned since the September 27th Turkey-backed Azerbaijani aggression against the Republic of Artsakh. The status quo that lasted for almost 3 decades dramatically changed in the South Caucasus. Russia deployed its peacekeeping contingent in Nagorno-Karabakh. A Turkish-Russian military joint observation center started to operate in Azerbaijan. What do you think? Do Russia and Turkey push the United States and the Western countries out of the region? What's your stance on this?
That certainly is what the goal of Russia and Turkey is. There's still room to push back. The French are doing a good job of pushing back. The United States needs to do more. For example, when it comes to Russia, Russia should not treat all of Artsakh as a security zone. Russia needs to allow people to go unmolested, whether they're Armenians, whether they're residents of Artsakh, or whether they're foreigners from Armenia into Artsakh, demanding that Russia and the Russian peacekeepers file violation reports, which they so far are not. And so there is a mechanism for going forward.
Mr. Rubin, also the Azerbaijani president claimed that he solved the Azerbaijan-Karabakh conflict and there is no Karabakh anymore. We see that the OSCE Minsk Group co-chair countries do not share this opinion and they call for the restoration of the talks to solve the status of Nagorno-Karabakh. President Biden, in his congratulatory message on the Armenia's Independence Day, particularly said, let me quote him, "We will work hand in hand with your government, including through the OSCE Minsk Group and other regional formats, to promote regional stability and conflict resolution. The United States will continue to advocate for the release of all Armenian detainees held in Azerbaijan." The end of the quote. What to expect from the United States in our region?
Well, I'm a little bit disappointed by the statement because we don't need the same old rhetoric which occurs every year. What we need is much more forceful action, and I suspect that will have to come from Congress. For example, ending the waiver of Section 907 of the Freedom Support Act. Azerbaijan is in violation. There's no way that should be tolerated. At the same time, the United States and the US Congress specifically needs to take much more action with regard to the Global Magnitsky Act, with regard to what Azerbaijan is doing. They need to call not for the release of Armenian detainees. They are prisoners of war and Azerbaijan has tortured them. They need to not only release the prisoners, but bring into, to send to justice the Azerbaijanis who have been involved in this. There also needs to be a comprehensive report on Azerbaijan's use of jihadi militants imported from Syria. And at the same time, on the United States side of things, we either had an intelligence failure in which we didn't see what Azerbaijan and Turkey were about to do when they launched a surprise attack on Artsakh, or the Trump administration and then the Biden administration were being disingenuous, saying one thing and doing another. Regardless, it's up to Congress to add clarity to that because the status quo is not acceptable. Look, some people have said for pragmatic reasons, the United States still needs to talk to Azerbaijan, to work with Azerbaijan. But the situation now is different than it was 10 years ago. Armenia has shown itself to be a democracy. Artsakh has shown itself to be a democracy. Azerbaijan is becoming a dictatorship in the same manner that Saddam Hussein's Iraq was. And so the United States needs to fundamentally rethink our orientation in the region.
So regarding the Section 907 that you have mentioned, on the April 24th, President Biden formally recognized the Armenian genocide, despite Turkey's effort to block the bill. However, the day after the recognition of the Armenian genocide, he waived the Section 907 of the Freedom Support Act, allowing the United States to send military aid to Azerbaijan. We also know that US representatives now are leading the charge to block US arms and aid to Azerbaijan. Other amendments demand immediate release of Armenian POWs held in Azerbaijan, to explore ways to increase US aid to Artsakh, to designate Turkey's Grey Walls as a terrorist group, and so on. What do you think? What is the reason why the United States gives moral support to Armenia and military aid to Azerbaijan?
Well, first of all, part of the reason is that traditionally, and I hate to say this, the Azerbaijani diplomatic presence in Washington has been stronger than the Armenian diplomatic presence. And that's not all just an issue of caviar diplomacy. It's just a matter of activity. At the same time, however, the State Department has a Turkey lobby that operates inside with former diplomats, with former ambassadors, and so forth. And ultimately, there needs to be greater attention from Congress and from the Secretary of State himself that the advice he is getting from within the State Department is wrong. Armenia also has a reputation of being much closer to Russia and Iran, which of course are two states with which the United States does not have very good relations. However, what most American officials don't understand is that Armenia's relationship with both Russia and Iran is a relationship of necessity based on the double embargo which Armenia faces from Turkey and Azerbaijan. The United States needs to demand and make aid and assistance contingent on Turkey and Azerbaijan lifting its embargo of Armenia 100%. And then we can look at where Armenia's orientation lies. But we have seen tremendous changes in Armenia over the years. At the same time, I regret that our Congress is not being more proactive. By US law, there is no reason why Secretary of State Antony Blinken should have waived Section 907. Azerbaijan is in violation of it, and Congress should hold that regardless of what the White House may say. And it's simply a matter of US law, and I would hope that the Armenian lobbyists, the Armenian caucus in Washington, would be much more proactive in making this an issue.
Mr. Rubin, during the last couple of weeks, Armenia and Turkey have exchanged public statements on their readiness to normalize relations. Turkey's President Erdogan announced that he received an invitation from Armenia's PM Pashinyan, but he expects Armenia to make a move, more concretely to give a corridor through its sovereign territory to Azerbaijan, then ask for meetings. Armenia continues to keep the door open to a possible dialogue, but says that there is no mention about corridor in trilateral statements of November 9 and January 11. What do you think? What's the goal of Turkey, and do you see a prospect of normalization?
Well, I don't trust Turkey here. We have seen this show before where Turkey will talk about outreach, but always come up with excuses not to conduct that outreach. So you've got a situation where President Erdogan right now in Turkey is under tremendous pressure because he or his family members stole more than $100 billion in foreign reserves. It's disappeared. No one knows where it is. Turkey's financial crisis is mounting. And so we see Recep Tayyip Erdogan feigning moderation, not only towards Armenia, but also towards Egypt, towards Israel, towards Greece, without actually taking any finite steps, because what Turkey wants is financial relief itself. Armenia has a better bargaining position here, and they should recognize that Turkey is not sincere. At any rate, let's talk about the corridors. How come the corridor is not free-flowing that links Armenia through the Lachin corridor to Artsakh? That needs to be resolved first. And then if the borders open, if the embargo on Armenia ends, there should be absolutely no reason why commerce can't traverse Armenia, whether it's Turkish commerce, whether it's Azerbaijani commerce, just like there should be no reason why Armenian products, Armenian fruits, can't go via truck from Armenia across Turkey to Greece, for example. Let Turkey open its borders. This isn't an issue over which to bargain. This is an issue of justice, and frankly, it's decades overdue.
So do you expect a relevant step from Turkey in this process?
I don't trust Turkey. But that said, there needs to be tremendous pressure on Turkey, and Armenia, France, the United States, and others need to recognize just how much pressure Turkey is under right now as their economy begins to implode. Turkey is isolated. Armenia may be in a dire situation economically, but Armenia is not isolated. In fact, while I said before that America is distrustful of Armenia's traditional relationship with both Russia and Iran, this can be an asset rather than a liability. The Armenian diaspora is especially strong in 4 countries: in the United States, in Iran, in Russia, and in the United Kingdom. So why can't Armenia be really the nexus for diplomacy and communication among these various states? Why can't we turn this liability into an asset? Before, we couldn't really discuss this because Armenia had its own internal political issues to resolve. But now that those elections have passed, there is an opportunity moving forward. Armenia is not isolated. Turkey is alone. And Armenia should understand that it has the stronger cards.
Mr. Rubin, you have highlighted the democratic achievement both Armenia and Artsakh, but we saw that during the 2020 aggression, this very democratic Armenia and democratic Artsakh left alone against the authoritarian Azerbaijan and Turkey. Armenians left alone with thousands of killed and wounded, missing, POWs and civilian captures illegally held in Azerbaijan, 2/3 of territories of the Republic of Artsakh occupied by Azerbaijan, cultural heritage under threat of complete destruction in these territories, tens of thousands of displaced people in a humanitarian crisis. What do you think? Why Western democracies ignored the rights of those living in Artsakh and their collective right to self-determination?
Well, first of all, let me say up front, it was shameful that the United States let Armenia and Artsakh down. I'm not a diplomat, so let me say this with moral clarity. That said, Turkey and Azerbaijan timed their surprise attack with brilliance. You had a situation where the United States was too focused on its own internal elections and was unprepared. And we should have been prepared because this wasn't the first time. We need to understand that we cannot take our eyes off the situation because our enemies are going to try to take advantage of this. That said, where Azerbaijan goes wrong is Azerbaijan won the victory, and part of this also, let's identify fault where it's important. Armenia and Artsakh focused only on the ground war. They didn't recognize what the importance of the unmanned aerial vehicles, the drone warfare, was going to be. And so the key strategic goal for Armenia right now should be to counter the drone warfare and also to get drones of its own. Now, Azerbaijan is not as victorious as Aliyev, as the dictator Aliyev pretends to be, because he sacrificed Azerbaijani sovereignty. The Turks and the Russians are now in Azerbaijan, and nothing Aliyev will do can get them to leave. He has sacrificed Azerbaijani legitimacy there. And so Armenia, in some ways, isn't as bad off as perhaps Azerbaijan will be down the road. That said, the other thing, and I always tell people I know involved in Turkey and Azerbaijan this, you may think that you've won a victory, but Aliyev is going to die one day. Vladimir Putin is going to die. And when Vladimir Putin dies, the Russian troops are going to withdraw because they're going to be much more concerned with security and transition in Russia. And if Azerbaijan tries to operate with force, well, Armenia in the future is going to try to operate with force and may do so. The only way to address this issue is through diplomacy. And frankly, the legal case for Armenia is stronger. When Azerbaijan declared its independence, again, from the Soviet Union in 1991, it declared its independence based on the territory of the First Republic of Azerbaijan rather than of Azerbaijan Soviet Socialist Republic. And therefore, that was an acknowledgement legally that Nagorno-Karabakh was Armenian. There's no reason why the United States should recognize the border gerrymandering that was undertaken by Joseph Stalin. The fact of the matter is, even though right now international law says that Nagorno-Karabakh is Azerbaijan, there's actually a much stronger case to be made that it's Armenian, and certainly the will of the people of Artsakh shows that it's Armenian.
Mr. Rubin, also Artsakh lost 2/3 of its territories, and the security of the Artsakh people now basically depends on the Russian peacekeeping contingent in Nagorno-Karabakh. It is functioning as a state, de facto one that has nothing in common with Azerbaijan beside the line of contact. What do you think? Is the Republic of Artsakh still a factor in determining the geopolitics in the region, and what Artsakh should do to increase its weight in these processes?
Well, certainly, this is where I can be critical of some in the Artsakh government. When we had the November 9th agreement, the November 9th agreement was very broad, very general. It was a ceasefire agreement. It wasn't a diplomatic resolution. And what I would like to see is the diplomats from Artsakh and the diplomats from Armenia to be much more aggressive in actually trying to fill in the white space on that almost blank paper. Why is it, for example, that a road should be built from Azerbaijan to occupied Nagorno-Karabakh without actually getting any concessions? What does any of these corridors actually mean? I mean, the fact of the matter is that the government of Artsakh can make many more demands. Why is it that the wife of the dictator of Azerbaijan is a goodwill ambassador for UNESCO? What does this do to the credibility of UNESCO? Use every opportunity you have in order to make your case instead of passively waiting for French, American, and Russian diplomats to do it for you. Because what the events of more than a year ago show is you cannot rely on the Americans or the French, let alone the Russians, to have your backs. You need to be much more aggressive diplomatically, and that will fill in the blanks, both within Congress, within the Minsk group, and so on.
Mr. Rubin, I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.